Hey, on my world. Is that it? Let's get into this review. Is going to be a little different. This mini-series was about 6 hours, so that's just a lot of work. And I originally started to do the review like I do my reality TV shows, but they were getting so long. And I think I'm interesting, but it was just, I edit this as well, so it was just way too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what I liked. I'm going to talk about some things that stuck out to me, some things that I didn't know. And then I'm also going to talk about what's coming up for BET and just what I appreciate from this network. Part one of the miniseries just basically takes place when the boys were a lot younger. I believe from about 10 to 15. What I enjoyed about this part of the miniseries was, one, the actors. Like, the actors drew me in right away, especially the younger actors. One of the leads, who was Ricky Bell, and that was played by Caleb McLaughlin from Stranger Things on Netflix fame. If you haven't seen Stranger Things, check it out. Caleb does a phenomenal job. He played Ricky Bell. I didn't get the names of the other guys, of the other actors. Some actors I already knew, but a lot of other actors it was hard to find their information, and I'll talk about that at the end of this. Anyway, I really enjoyed the actors. I love how BET used new actors, upcoming actors, actors we haven't heard about, and then legends, you know what I mean? I love seeing Lisa Nicole Carson. She played Ricky Bell's mother of Ally McBeal fame. I love seeing Wood Harris. He played Brooke, who was the boys' first original manager. Then we have Yvette Nicole Brown. Who else was in here? Face I Love, who played I forget his name, but he played like this sleazy kind of booking manager guy. Frederick Starr, yes, Frederick Starr. He played that character, and I really enjoyed that. I thought the casting was phenomenal. That's what I really enjoyed about this part of the miniseries and throughout. The casting was absolutely phenomenal. I think they nailed the characters. The casting directors got the characters down pat, especially the young gentleman that played Bobby Brown. When I looked at that kid, I saw Bobby Brown. He had his entire swagger. Like, I didn't know Bobby, like, none of us knew Bobby Brown as a kid, aside from New Edition. But it was the way he embodied that character. I was just like, the casting did a phenomenal job. What I also enjoyed was the costume, the costuming. I just felt like all of the outfits were just on point. They transported you to the time just by how they were dressed, and I felt like everything was very detailed and on point. Another thing that I really enjoyed was the music. Guys, outside of New Edition, the music that they had playing throughout was so good, especially the music from when the guys were younger, because the boys were born in the 70s, so they're about kids around this time, and I mean, that music was so on point. BET, it will be very wise of you to release a soundtrack to this miniseries. It would be a missed opportunity if you don't, because the music was phenomenal. Whoever did the music did a phenomenal job. I believe one of the people who worked on the music was Divine Evans. I'm not sure of the other gentleman, because again, it was very hard to find information on the production of this miniseries. What I also loved was the story. Abdul Williams did a phenomenal job with this story. There were so many moments, guys, especially in the first half. I cried a little bit in the second and the third installment of this, but the first portion, especially with the kids, I'm telling you, my mother and I, we cried a bunch, because the kids did such a good job, but also the story was just, it really pulled you in. And Chris Robinson, who did the direction, he did a phenomenal job as well, because it wasn't this was like the Jacksons. Does anybody remember that the Jacksons, that miniseries? It was an event. It brought families together. This New Edition miniseries did that. There were 3 generations watching this. It was myself, my little sister, and my mom, and we were so captivated. Do you know how hard it is to captivate an audience that spans 3 different generations? You have to have great writing, great direction, great acting. The whole thing was just put together very well. I was very proud of the work, and I was very proud of the fact that BET really invested some money. Because if you remember last year, we were done with BET. we as the viewers were done because we did not feel that they were giving us quality entertainment, quality shows. Aside from being Mary Jane, you know what I mean? She really didn't have anything to really compete with. So this is a step up, and it's a step in the right direction. So I'm really, really proud of BET. There wasn't anything that I really didn't like. The only thing that I didn't like was, me personally, was that it was really hard to find information about the production of the show, the actors, and even their IMDb page is really slim. There's not a lot of information, and even when I went to the website to find out information, I couldn't find anything. So BET, I really think you need to work on that, because this is a hit. The show was a hit. It's your highest ratings in a very long time, and you need to put some money in investing in how people can find out who these people are. You know what I mean? They did a phenomenal job. Maybe we might want to follow these people, or, you know, see their, especially for new actors, I want to follow them on their journey. So I really wish that it was that part of this miniseries was taken into consideration, you know, that it would be a hit and that people will want to know about the production, about the actors, about, you know, the writers. It's not a lot of information there, and I really wish that would have happened. But all in all, the first installment was really great. You basically get a journey of the boys from when they were very young to when they become teenagers. You basically get the story in between, and I think another thing that I did like was that I found out that New Edition they were touring. They were going on international tours. They were, you know, signing autographs, had fans all over falling and crying over them, and they were still living in the projects. Another thing that I liked was how the mothers were portrayed. A lot of times, especially in urban films, Black women play stereotypes, and I didn't feel like any of these mothers play stereotypes. They were concerned, you know, poor Black women who were just trying to make it out, and it really hit home for me because that was a lot of my childhood. I didn't grow up with a lot of money, but we were poor, but we didn't have that mindset. Like, my mother wanted more for us, so she put us in programs, and, you know, we were able to travel through, you know, assistance, government assistance, but we weren't the stereotype that you see on TV. So I really like that we were able to see Black, you know, poor to middle class people who were real, who I could relate to, who weren't some type of stereotype written by a white hand. This is why you have to have representation in the writer's room, because Abdul captured those characters perfectly. And one last thing before I move on to the second installment. Another thing that I enjoyed was that we got to see the story of Ralph Tresvant a little bit more, because Ralph Tresvant, to me, kind of disappeared in the group. So he was always one of the members who I felt like I didn't know a lot about. And even now, it just like seems like he just disappeared. So I enjoyed learning a little bit more about him, and I really had no idea that he was approached to go solo, you know, and that he was essentially the Michael Jackson of the group. And I never knew that, because they were always, I don't know, I felt like they were all leads at some point. Like, they all really had a job to do. I know some sang more than others. Of course, Bobby and Ralph sang more than others, but I never really noticed that. So that was good to know. And so I just really enjoyed learning about these young men and what really formed them to end up to be the type of men that they are today. So I felt like the first installment was really good. A lot of information. Even I gave a few things away, but if you haven't seen it, I'm telling you, there's still so much more. Please watch it. You will not be disappointed. On to the second installment. This time, the boys are now teenagers. They're wild. They're rambunctious. They're all over the place. They had a change in management. If you haven't seen it, I won't go too much into it. I'm just going to let you know that there's a scene that's going to break your heart like it did mine, because listen, I was bawling. You know what? I'm sorry. I just have to talk about it. Can we talk? Let's talk. There is a scene, if you haven't seen it, click off now. There is a scene where the boys, the mothers get together because they're not making money. Basically, New Edition is not making money. The ladies signed a contract. They didn't know what they were signing. Basically, they had a lot of recoupable expenses. So what that means is that, you know, when you see them rappers and getting these nice cars and these chains, and they started from the bottom, they had no money, and all of a sudden they live in this luxurious life. basically they're spending the studio's money. So they have to pay that back to the studio, aka the record company. They were spending a lot and they weren't seeing where the money was going because it wasn't going to them. So they decided to fire Brooke, who didn't really know about the music industry, but he was Ronnie's uncle, and I'm telling you, Brooke loved those boys. He loved them. And there's this scene where the mothers fire him, and ladies, gentlemen, who's ever watching, I bawled when they let him go, especially when he gave that speech about how he loves them. When they didn't have no clothes, I take money out of my pocket and I buy clothes for them. When they fight, I break them up. When after rehearsals, I'm the one that takes them to, after they get off a tour, I'm the one that takes them to school the next morning. I love those boys. Listen, Brooke broke me. He broke me, and I could not stand those mothers when they let him go. So anyway, they have a new manager now who is played by, I just had his name. You know, the guy, the white dude from Higher Learning, Mr. Gentrification. Anyway, he's their new manager, and the boys are teenagers at this point. So, you know, they're teenagers. They're going unsupervised. They're traveling all over the world. They're having orgies with Soul Train dancers. They're, you know, living in places they never thought they imagined. They're, you know, off to London and back and all over the place. Their songs are like a hit. They're just really popular and famous now, and they're kids. So, you know, although the teenagers are still very young, so they're just living really, really wild. And the manager, their new manager, Michael Rappaport, thank you, Lord, doesn't know how to really deal with them. One, because they're of a different culture. You know, they're of a different culture and they're of a different class. And he just saw money, so he latched onto these kids, but he didn't really know how to interact with them because of the cultural and wealth gap that they have between them. So anyway, another thing that we find out is that Bobby Brown was doing coke. It's like at 17 years old, and that bothered me because if you watch the Lifetime movie with Whitney, it said that Whitney introduced Bobby to coke, or maybe it was crack. My mom says she thinks it was crack, but I don't think Whitney did crack, right? I'm so confused. When I saw that, I was just like, wait, I thought Whitney introduced Bobby to drugs. That wasn't the case. Bobby gets turned out early, and the boys have to actually fire him from the group because he's just out of pocket. And that really broke my heart because Bobby put the group together, and him and Mike got into a fight a while ago, and he had the choice to throw him out, and he didn't. And so I felt hurt because I was just like, I know Bobby is a mess, but when it was time for you to get out the group, Mike, he didn't vote you out. So why would y'all vote out Bobby? I know he was a mess, but I just felt bad. And that scene where they cut Bobby and everybody is bawling, I was bawling too, okay? I was bawling too. And let me just say this. Although, you know, the boys had to grow up and we had to finish out this journey with them, I really felt bad for a while. Like the first hour into the second part, I felt bad because I really missed the younger actors. I thought they did such a good job, and I missed them. I missed seeing them rehearse. I missed seeing Brooke, you know, impart into them. I really, really, really missed it. But anyway, the boys are getting older, and one thing that I noticed about this was, if you've seen the TLC movie, it's pretty much the same thing. You have these older execs speaking to these younger artists and just manipulating them and bringing dissension. You know, everybody's telling Ralph that he's the lead, that he's the manager is calling him the star. The boys are not getting the same amount of vocal and musical attention as Ralph is. So it bridges like this separation that builds for years. Builds so much to the point Ralph decides that he wants to go solo. And he was cocky, and he was, you know, his head got a little big. He got a little full of himself because a lot of people, you know, music execs were speaking to him like he was a star and saying that he does everything. And, you know, so his head got big. So I kind of excused his cockiness because he was a child being fed these things by adults who knew what they were doing. I felt like a lot of the adult executives were doing like a lot of divide and conquer between the boys so that they could control them. And it was really sad to see because you saw it with TLC. And it was also sad to see that it was black people who are manipulating young black kids from the same demographic that they were from and probably chasing the same dream. So for you to have made it and you have this experience and you know what it's like to be this talented and try to make it out the hood, for them to do the same thing was just really, really, really broke me. Also, we're introduced to Bobby as a father. He was the first one to have a child. Ralph Tresvant got his girlfriend pregnant, but she lost the baby. But this fun little fact about Bobby, when he got the call that his girlfriend was having a baby, they were landing. So when he got to the hospital, he named the baby Landing because he was landing when he got the news that the baby was being born, which was cute. I remember when we first heard the name, we was just like, Landing. We didn't know the story, so you know, we was hating. But I thought that was really cute, and I could go on about this, but I will say what I liked about this was that again, a little bit more about Ralph Tresvant. For me, he was like the mystery part of the group because he was always so quiet. You really didn't know much about him, but just to see that, you know, Ralph was a little cocky. I had no idea, and I didn't know that it was his choice to do a little solo album. I thought as it was presented to us, if you remember, as it was presented to us, they were going their separate ways, but still staying a group. They were doing like, you know, when they say they're doing solo projects, but the group never really gets back. That's what I thought was going on at the time. So I had no idea that they had all this tension. And I also had no idea that you know, execs in the industry were like, you know, basically speaking crap into these boys and tearing up that friendship. So that was hard to watch. But I really, really liked that. I liked that we got an in-depth story on some of the not so well known members. What I also like is that we get an introduction of Mr. Ma himself, Johnny Gill, played by the very beautiful Luke James. Although Luke had the vocals down, I don't think Luke is an actor. So I felt like he struggled in some parts, and I felt like maybe that's why they cut his part down significantly, because Luke is not in this miniseries as much as the other characters. And I think that maybe because of acting ability. I could be wrong. I will say this. Luke James sang a lot of parts in this miniseries. Because you know how Luke has that whoo. He's like known for that little whoo. Yeah, I did it terribly. But he's known for that. So I could hear it a lot. And especially if you watch the first segment, The Untouchables. I felt like he sang every part for The Untouchables because I could hear his voice in that. And I could also hear his voice in like a lot of other songs. So I feel like he held a majority of the songs. So maybe that's why you didn't see a lot of Luke acting, because he was doing all of the singing. But I didn't see him in it a lot, and I kind of would have liked to have known more about Johnny Gill. So that'll start with what I didn't like. I didn't think that we got to know Johnny Gill that much. Maybe he wasn't around because what I do know is that New Edition sat down. They were a part of this miniseries. They sat down with the writer, the directors. They even sat down with the actors, and they were a part of everything. I don't know if Johnny Gill was as involved. I mean, there were pictures of him with Luke James, but I don't know if he was that involved because we just did not get a lot of Johnny Gill. Like, he's still very secretive. I mean, we all knew about Stacey Lattisaw if you followed the group for that long. But there's not a lot that we got to know about him. Another thing I didn't like was there was a lot of, like, not a lot of, but Whitney was just erased from this. There was no Whitney. And I do believe at that time, Bobby Brown and Whitney Houston had started a little something. But she's like not even mentioned. Not even mentioned in this miniseries. And that was just really weird to me that you wouldn't mention one of the greatest pop stars of all time who dated Bobby Brown, the king of R&B. Like, all of that was left out. I think they probably didn't touch it because of the Lifetime movie, but I would have liked to have known how that relationship came to pass, because I feel like from watching this, maybe the Lifetime movie wasn't as accurate as we all have thought. I forgot to mention this. What another thing that I loved was that this segment of the miniseries ended with "Can You Stand the Rain?" and the boys sang it. Like, they sang this. I don't think it was New Edition, because there were some times where I felt like, was it New Edition? Was it not? And same thing with the kids. I don't know if the kids could sing. I was trying to find out that information. I couldn't find it. I don't know if the kids could sing or if they got actors or if they hired singers to sing the kid songs. But if they did, the kids nailed it. And the same thing with this group. I think they nailed every song except for BBD. Ooh, that Poison video, we'll get to that later. That Can You Stay in the Rain song, man, those boys nailed it, especially Luke James. He killed it. You know who were standout singers in this for me? Luke James and the younger boy that played Ralph Tresvant. That little boy's vocal range is out the window. If the actor who didn't play him sang that song, whoever it was, if it was somebody else, get that kid a record deal. Let that kid just do Jackson 5 covers. Get all the kids that sang in the beginning of this, just do be a Jackson 5 cover band. I would pay good money to see them because their vocals were top notch. So that kid that played Ralph Tresvant and Luke James knocked it out the park for me vocally. Third installment of the New Edition series, the finale. We got a lot of information. We opened up with If It Isn't Love. I was about to say, can you say it right? If It Isn't Love, that video. This stuck out to me because I remember watching that video. I had no idea who Brooke was. Now that I know who Brooke is, I just felt, I was so excited. And I forgot to mention that in the second installment, that Brooke came back. Like, the boys had fired, the mothers had fired Brooke, but Brooke came back. And when he came back and reunited with the boys, because he was the only one who could really get them into shape. Vocally, dance-wise, he was the only one who could really do that. So when he came back, I cried again. But anyway, we open up with that video, and I was always wondering, who was that guy? Like, look, I just thought it was so weird. That video was so weird to me, and I was just like, for you guys to be New Edition, you should have something better than this, better quality. Having seen this miniseries, now I get that video, and I think it's perfect. I love the video now. I think it's so perfect because I know what's going on in that moment. We also get BBD. We see the evolution of BBD, Belle Biv DeVoe. The only thing I want to say about that is I wish they would have hired or just got, BBD to do the vocals because whoo, the vocals on this was not great. And the only reason why I'll say that is because everything else from here on, up to now, was phenomenal. Like, the vocals were just out the park. And then to get this lackluster BBD vocal performance was just like, no sir, no ma'am. Another thing that I liked about this, although it was a lot of information, there were a lot of scenes directly pulled from, well, the whole thing is pulled from real life, but there are a lot of scenes, specifically the BET Video Soul interview, that I remember watching. And every moment, every word, every reaction, they had that scene down pat. If you watch the miniseries and you get to the BET Video Soul interview, watch it, then pause your TV, go to YouTube, Google New Edition BET Video Soul interview, and it'll come up. And I'm telling you, play them side by side. The exact same thing. They did a phenomenal job with that because I was just like, oh my goodness, I remember this. I remember Bobby jumping up, and I remember him, rubbing Mike's back. I remember all of that. We also find out how Boyz II Men came to fruition, and that was New Edition was performing. They were getting on their tour bus, and Mike was outside. He was walking to the bus, and New Edition came up and sang to them. Not New Edition, Boyz II Men came up and sang to them, and they introduced themselves. And he kind of decided that he would work with them at that moment. But what I loved about that also was that it was full circle from how they started to here. Mike is now an executive, and you'll find out a little bit about that more in the second installment. He was basically tired of being screwed over, so he decided to become an executive, and here he is about to work with one of the greatest boy bands of all time, in my opinion. I will always say Boyz II Men. I'm born and raised in Philadelphia. Always Boyz II Men. Another thing I love was this My video. I'm telling you, BET put in work. Chris Robinson, Abdul Wood, they put in work because the My videos played, Johnny Gill's played by Luke James. Every shot, every frame is the exact replica of the video. They did such a good job. And another thing that I enjoyed about this was that we find out a little bit more about Ricky. What I loved about the miniseries overall is that the lesser known New Edition members, not lesser known, but the ones who were not always out in the media and in some drama that we would know all this stuff about them, or the ones who weren't in the public eye like that much, like Ralph and Ricky. You know, Ricky was, we would see Ricky, but he would be performing. Ralph just disappeared. So I like learning about him, and I also like learning about Ricky, and you know how he had a little drug problem. Who knew that Ricky had a drug problem? He even OD'd. Who knew? So I was just like, oh wait, we are spilling all the tea. And who knew that Ronnie was the glue to the band? There was so much information and just so many pieces that you put together. Like, one of the things was that they had this New Edition reunion concert, and I remember when that was being put together. That was the fight that transpired from the beginning of the miniseries, and we find out how that happened. We also find out how Bobby Brown got his Gumby. That was really cute. But with the fight, I remember, and I had a lot of these moments watching this miniseries. I remember where I was. I remember being in my living room, and I remember hearing my mom talking about the concert. I remember her saying, like, no, Bobby, why? No, no, oh, no, Bobby. And I remember all of that. So going back to my mom being upset about Bobby essentially destroying this tour, and to seeing how it all played out, I was like, oh my goodness, BET just like wrote my childhood and played it before me. You know what I mean? Like, I had so many moments watching this miniseries. Anyway, we get to the end, where another moment that I remember, Ronnie is getting his wedding together, and he's not really in a good place because him and the boys are not talking because they had this whole fiasco with the tour. And so his fiance at the time encourages him to reach out to the guys and have them come and, you know, stand alongside him and be his groomsmen. And listen, if you were like in a 90s kid, you remember this green camera video of Bobby Brown floating around. Was it the internet at that? We had internet at that time, I believe so. And or maybe seen it on TV, of Bobby Brown singing at this wedding, at Ronnie's wedding, in this white suit. And I remember everybody clowning him, like, how do you show up to somebody's wedding in a white suit? And they talk about it in the movie, and I'm just like, I remember that. I remember them singing. I remember all of this. I remember seeing the video. I think I watched it on like BET or something, like a BET Entertainment, and they were showing like clips. So I remember all of this, and I'm telling you guys, they had it down to the T. Anyway, the wedding brings everybody together, and while they're at this wedding, Stephen Hill asks Brooke, who's their manager, or like their kind of manager at this point, if he would, you know, get them all together for BET's 25th anniversary. Do you guys remember that? I totally remember that. And then we cut to the anniversary, and then the miniseries ends. But do you remember the 25th? Like, they had everything down pat. The singing, Bobby Brown, when he had his little solo part, and when he walked out, yeah, BET. They put it down with this. I was so inspired, enamored, overjoyed, proud, relieved, you know, because Black people, we're talented. We can put out some good work, and I just personally didn't feel like BET was putting out the quality. And I'm telling you, they put out quality. They put money into this. They hired great talent all across the board. The production was top notch. I honestly think that this miniseries, is worthy of nominations. Like, if it doesn't get some kind of Emmy or a Golden Globe, something, this has to be at least nominated because it's so good. I mean, I know it's going to sweep all the Black awards, but it really should, you know, get some mainstream praise because it was phenomenal. And I have friends from all over, like, oh my gosh, like, we're all like texting. It was an event. This was a phenomenal show. I am extremely proud of BET. They really put forth a great effort in making this come to pass, and I am just so proud of them for the work that they did here, because this was a good miniseries. Top notch. Concerning this miniseries, this part of the miniseries and overall, I guess the only thing I didn't like was that there was not enough of Johnny Gill for me. I would have liked to have known more. I felt I left watching this miniseries knowing a lot more about New Edition. What I didn't like was that I don't think I knew anything or learned anything new about Johnny Gill, really. And I also feel like the third part, and maybe they didn't want to make it a four-part miniseries, was so much information just stuffed in. I'm telling you, if you haven't seen it and you watch this review, still watch it. There's so much that I left out for the sake of time. It's so much to digest. It's really well put together, but I just felt like the last part, they just there was so much information and they probably didn't get the budget to go further, and maybe they used what they had to make this really good, so they just pushed everything in this last 2 hours, and I wish it would have been longer, because I'm telling you, you had the audience. They could have did like this. They could have made this miniseries 6 weeks long, and I'm telling you, we would be watching. They didn't have to do 2 hours a night. We would have tuned in every week. That's how good this was. And I feel like Boyz II Men might be next. Boyz II Men or Jodeci. There's some whispers going around, so I feel like that may be next. But all in all, it was a terrific, phenomenal, whatever good words you can say about it. It was a great production. And I've watched it again. My mother has watched it again. We have it saved on our DVR. It's on demand if you haven't seen it. It's worth a purchase if you don't have cable. It's really, really good. It's a classic that you should have. It's up there like with 5 Heartbeats. Like, we have the Jacksons, we have the 5 Heartbeats, and I'm definitely going to purchase New Edition because this is something my kids need to see. It's really, really good. And it also is a true testament to the talent of New Edition, because like I said before, 3 generations was watching this miniseries, and we were all just jamming and rocking and having a good time. My little sister knew everything about New Edition. I knew everything about New Edition. My mom knew everything about New Edition. And you know, when New Edition was, you know, blowing up, I was just a kid, but a lot of their songs are just a very important part of my childhood, like Candy Girl. Like, what? I remember that song. Can You Stand the Rain? I remember when Ralph Tresvant went solo. It's really, really good, guys, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. And props to BET for putting out some good work. And let me tell you something. They had a lot of commercials, but one thing that they did advertise was a lot of shows that they have coming up. And one that I'm really looking forward to. I'm looking forward to Quad, but I'm really looking forward to Rebel. That looks so good. It reminds me of like a Marvel character. Rebel seemed like a superhero to me. Like the way it was shot and the way it was advertised, I was just like, oh my god, because I'm a huge comic book fan, especially X-Men. So I was like already into it. So it looks really, really, really good, and I will be watching that. If you want me to review it, please let me know in the comments section, and I'll review that as well, because that seems like a really, really good show. And then the Nelson Mandela Madiba, BET is doing that as well with Lawrence Fishburne. And John Singleton is the executive producer of Rebel. BET did not come to play with you hoes in 2017. I guess they knew that we was going to have to deal with a lot in this year, so they decided to give us some good stuff. So this is going to be the first time in years, since like College Hill, that I'll be tuning into BET like this, because I watch BET basically for like award shows. I don't really watch it for any other programming, but they got me back. They got me back. I will be tuned to BET all week. Bravo, BET. Great job. So that's my review. I tried to get as much as I could in here without being too long. But guys, I highly recommend that you watch New Edition, the miniseries. It was just so well put together. I think that it's a cinematic treasure, especially for our community. That's something that you need to keep up there. It's really, really good, and I highly recommend it. And if you like what you see here, please like, comment, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next video for something else. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Bye.